Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Great. Like Susan was just saying, one of the greatest things about AFTD is their priority to build a community where people who are affected by FTD, either directly or indirectly, can all support each other, which is why it's so wonderful to be here in front of all of you tonight. FTD has been a part of my life since I was old enough to remember. My grandmother developed a disease when she was in her 50s. I had just been born, and I remember dreading the days where she babysat us because I always thought she was mean. My dad would be working, my mother was a singer at her church, and my brothers and I would be trying to play in the living room, but we couldn't have too much fun or else Grandma would yell at us for being too loud. Some days, though, were better than others. Her behavior just would often change drastically. Of course, she wasn't always like that. That's just how I remember her. When I grew older, I learned more about the admirable and inspiring person she was before she'd gotten sick, and I started feeling bad because while she was sick, she was frustrated, and she struggled with so much, and she had difficulty finding the words for everyday household objects. She wandered all around our town and ended up either at my house or my aunt's house every single day. Things that were essential parts of her daily routine, like taking her insulin, started slipping her mind more and more often, which started putting her health at stake. There were books about Alzheimer's disease scattered around the house when I was growing up, and my family would try to visit Grandma in the nursing home at least twice a week. My mom went every day, I believe. Eventually, I decided to stop going, though, because it was too sad to see her. By the time I was 7 years old, she was in a wheelchair, and she would either laugh or she'd get terrified if you walked up to her and said hello. I was 8 years old when she passed away. Her sister, Betty, showed some of the exact same symptoms and then passed away in 2009. Both of their brains were donated to different organizations after their deaths. From neuropathology reports we received, we were able to conclude that both of them had FTD. Now, genetic cases of FTD are fairly uncommon. 10 to 15% of all FTD cases are the cause of an autosomal dominant inheritance. When my uncle Danny was clinically diagnosed with FTD in November of 2011, things came abundantly clear that we were trapped in this uncommon and upsetting statistic. I was only 13 when I learned that I would have to get used to thinking about FTD because ever since then, not a day would pass where it would not cross my mind. My mother's family got involved with the frontotemporal disorders unit at Mass General Hospital to learn more about the genetics of FTD. And upon genetic testing, it was revealed that my uncle had inherited the MAPT gene from my grandmother. The good news was that now we had a tracker. We could easily look for mutations in chromosome 17 from a simple blood test. The bad news was that the tracker had been found in the genes of two more of my uncle's siblings, including my mother. So my mother has a 95% chance of developing the disease in the future. And because my mother inherited the mutated chromosome, regardless whether or not she develops the disease, my two brothers and I also have a 50% chance of developing it. My immediate response to all this news, of course, was an intense combination of sadness and fear. My middle school years were pretty much clouded with FTD, and it became a darker and more prevalent force, but my secondary response was to do something about it rather than just sit idly by, and there are three reasons for that. First, I had seen FTD take the lives of 3 family members, but I have many, many extended family members who have dealt with it as well, and I know that I will see it strike again multiple times in my future. It's in my medical records, family history of FTD, 50% chance of developing, of inheritance, and it's a possible fate that I have to be prepared for. Second, my grandmother was actually misdiagnosed twice. Her clinical diagnosis was Alzheimer's, of course. That's a very common thing with FTD patients. The neuropathological diagnosis after her death was Lewy body dementia, and it was not until 10 years after her death that we got the definitive evidence that it was FTD. It's a disease that's commonly misdiagnosed because there was such an extreme lack of awareness. And third, I knew there were no clinical treatments or cures. It is terminally irreversible, and it's a very devastating thing to watch, I'm sure many of you know, let alone experience 3 times before you even turn 16. These 3 factors are what motivated me to contact AFTD and take action. I started a small fundraiser in my middle school cafeteria during one of our lame middle school dances. You know, the ones that happen every month where you just kind of jumped up and down to the music and sweat and then came back in another month and did the same thing again. But what that became was an internet campaign. It was a grassroots fundraiser, which is now entitled FTD Exists. And it's dedicated to honoring my family, spreading awareness of the disease, and raising funds that would be donated to research and drug discovery programs. I've collaborated with local schools, churches, and small businesses, developing public presentations that told my story and expressed how to join me in my efforts. And that didn't mean anyone had to do much. I mean, yes, I happily accepted donations, but that was the most I expected from people. The least I wanted was for the voice of my family to be heard. Awareness is one of the most important things, especially when it comes to a rare disease such as this one. And since my campaign started in February 2012, I've raised over $5,000 that have been donated to AFTD. From the beginning, AFTD was supportive, sensitive, and more than willing to help. They had given me all the resources I needed to effectively educate people at FTD, including bracelets, t-shirts, pamphlets, and important websites and other resources to share. And I also had the chance to tell my story with their back-to-school campaign in 2012. Again, when I helped test out their Kids and Teens website in 2013. Again, for a Mother's Day campaign that happened earlier this year in May, and once again here tonight. I hope that people can see me as an example that, one, there is no age minimum to get involved, and two, it is not hard to take action. I've said this many times before. Action does not require any kind of experience, just drive. It is very easy to seem helpless when you or a loved one is going through the situation, but I hope I can help people realize that nobody is helpless. Sometimes all it takes is a combination of word of mouth and hope, which leads to a sense of greater recognition and understanding, and ultimately helps us move towards our goal of finding a cure. When all is lost, remember that you have a community who knows that what you are going through, who sees you, and who is there to help you. Thank you.